Hi booktube, my name is Jake and I'm starting a new channel. I'd like to start making some videos about books, so I thought the first step should be to tell you guys a little bit about me and who I am as a book reader, as a collector. So I've been working at a used bookstore, used and antiquarian books, for around 7 years. I'm from Canada and I've always been a reader, but in the last 7 years working at the store, I've really started to come into my own in terms of my knowledge about books, my love of them, collecting them. I've really enjoyed my time working there and I've learned a lot. Books are definitely the main passion of my life. I'm also a graduate student and I study neuroscience. What I do in my spare time is I read, I catalog, and I collect. You can see some of my shelves just behind me. There's some more. My favorite type of booktube video, which does not exist nearly enough, is library tours. And I really hope to do a good one and create a really good video. That's not this video though, but I will do that. I think it's the coolest to get to see how people store their books, what kind of idiosyncratic collections they have, and I hope that with this channel I can bring a little bit of a love for more classics, more antiquarian stuff, for book history, and yeah, that's my aim with this channel. So now that my introduction's out of the way, I thought that I would do a little show and tell to kind of further explain the types of books I'm interested in and the types of stuff I like to talk about. So without further ado, I have a little stack, well, maybe not a little stack, but a little stack here. And we'll go through these, and it sort of explains just some of the things that I'm into in books and in collecting. Number one, my favorite author that I discovered maybe 3 or 4 years ago is Jorge Luis Borges. He's a great Argentinian writer of short stories. You've probably heard of him. He is great. This is my nice hardcover edition of The Library of Babel, which is just one of his short stories. I have his collected works, and I'm always trying to collect extra bits of Borges. His nonfiction, his individual story collections I'm starting to try to collect now. But this one I got recently and I'm quite happy with it. It's The Library of Babel, and it comes along these excellent engravings by this French engraver. And you can see the jacket has just a full color rendering of one of those engravings. This great picture of a colossal library, which really captures the feeling of Borges' story. If you haven't read this, you need to. You can find a PDF really easily, and the story is really short. Yes, here's the exterior, of the Library of Babel. But Borges, he's one of my favorites, and in general, I love magical realism. I love mystical short stories and full-length novels too. Thinking of Calvino. I love Murakami. I also collect Murakami first editions as well. Speaking of Borges, and I have this one here, which is Borges and Memory. So this intersects into a couple of my interests because I also study memory as a neuroscience master's student. So this is right up my alley. Borges had this great story. It's called The Memorious Funes, or Funes the Memorious. And about a person basically who could never forget. And this is a book by a scientist from Argentina who uses, obviously Borges is a big deal in Argentina. He's a national literary hero. But as a memory researcher, he's looking for certain things. He's studied people who have that condition of having a very detailed autobiographical memory. The next section that I collect in is books about books, and books about loving books as well. So this is the classic on loving books. It's called Philobiblon. It's by Richard de Bury. Richard de Bury was he was a priest from, I think, the 14th century, so that's the 1300s. And he wrote this treatise basically saying that, look, priests, you have access to all these things, you should love them. Books are the method by which we can learn, transmit information to each other, and it's kind of a love song to books, and it's also a letter to his peers saying, you guys need to read more, you need to take care of your books, and you know, as like a head of a library or a head of a monastery, you should be collecting books, you should be preserving them. Basically just, you know, it's in the most flowery terms, a love song to books. We have, you know, the Latin text over here and the English text over here. Within that section, I also, as a pastime, just here and there, like to bind books. So this is one of my favorite manuals. It's called Handbook Bookbinding, and it's by Aldrin Watson. Just an excellent manual for this. It's really slim. The author drew these great illustrations here to show you what you should be doing, how you should be holding the book, and it's really quite detailed. Found a couple books with methods from here, and it works great. Hang on, I'm just gonna get one here. For now I have two. I can show you some more later. But these ones were both Penguin Classics books. So we have here the first one I ever did, Medieval People by Eileen Power. You can see there, I retained these from the actual Penguin books and gave it its own hardcover binding. And it's a little rough, but I was pretty happy with it overall. My follow-up to it, which I was also pretty happy with, is History of the English Church and People by Bede. And you can see we retained some of the decorations from the Penguin books. I really was happy to get the Celtic cross here. I thought that looked pretty nice, and the green really fit. And same thing, it's a Penguin Classics. We've given it a green M papers and a hardcover binding. So hopefully it's a lot more durable than it once was. So yeah, Handbook Binding. This is a great book if you want to get into it because it's really simple. This one here, Rhodes and Rhodesia. Now my family on my mother's side comes from Zimbabwe, and back then it was called Rhodesia. There's lots of complicated history here. This is a book I have not read. It's a bit of a doorstopper, but I do collect books on Rhodesia. And yeah, I just like to unpack a little bit more about, you know, where my family comes from. It relates a lot. I live in Canada, so a really important issue here is colonialism and how settlers have disrupted native peoples who have lived here. And Rhodesia is a really similar story. You know, seized the land and oppressed all of the native peoples there as well. So there's a lot of parallels to Canada because it's my family. I'm interested in kind of seeing where that comes from and starting to unpack that. Now this is one of my favorites. It's one of the books I've had for the longest. It's terribly beaten up, probably some of the worst in my whole library, but it's the Poetic Edda, which is the Norse mythological poems. It's hard to say what my favorite area to collect is. This is probably it. This is my favorite translation. It's by Lee Hollander. But I also have around 4 other translations, and I think one more currently in the air that I've just bought. But these poems are great. Anytime you've heard a Norse myth, it's more or less come from here. There's a couple other places where it can stem from, but this is the bulk of it. And yeah, I love reading these. I love collecting them. This is one of my other favorites that I picked up, which is non-specific, but it's called Traditional Aspects of Hell, which is a great title. Unfortunately, the spine is somewhat sunned, but the front is still sort of this brilliant and really affecting, kind of horrifying cover, which I love just as a lover of the design of books. The idea is it goes through what hell looks like for a bunch of different cultures. So we have Egyptian, Assyrian, Brahmin hell, and what they mean is you know, the traditional Hindu concept of hell. Zoroastrian, classic hell, so they mean Greek and Roman hell. Scandinavian hell, which is Norse paganism as well, Hebrew hell, Christian hell, Muslim hell, and barbarian hell. So it covers quite a lot of ground. There's some great illustrations. For example, here, this is in classic hell. And some pretty gruesome ones. I'll pull up a gruesome one here. Yeah, let's say this. Got a double plate here. Some people getting mashed up with clubs, and some people getting burned at the same time. So, this book is super interesting. It is a great book to have on the shelf and have somebody perusing your books and then go, oh my god, what is that? So, one of my favorite books. And the last one, still in religious studies, the last area I like to collect in is Japanese Buddhism. I find its teachings can be helpful to me, but I'm also really interested in it as a movement, how it's developed throughout time, and this is just my favorite book that I have on that. It's called The Face of Jizo, Image and Cult in Medieval Japanese Buddhism. It's by Hank Glassman. This is a great book. It's really, really specific, but I enjoyed every second of reading this. Jizo is a bodhisattva. He's the bodhisattva of a lot of things, but among them, the safety of travelers and of children, and also recently childbirth. And this book is fascinating. It goes through, his roles in medieval Buddhism. There's lots of interesting things, interesting facts that go just beyond Jizo himself. But yeah, how he was related to in terms of the monastics. The relation between him and traditional dance, which is really interesting. I had no idea beforehand. Yeah, so Jizo is a really interesting bodhisattva. This book is great, and I hope to get more like it. I do have some more, and I'd like to show them off. So with that is my show and tell that tells you a little bit about who I am as a collector. So I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that I make another video, because I might not.